Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my channel, we thank you for coming on. Please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as bell notification icon to stay up to date to interviews coming your way. You can also follow the audio syndicated podcast for the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder on mindbodyspirit.fm. Today's guest on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is Maria Desimone. Maria is a world-renowned astrologer, and she has a lot to tell us, all things in the stars and what 2025 has for us in store this upcoming year. And she'll be providing astrological forecasts, astrological insights, and her own backstory that got her into the incredible renowned astrologer that we know today. So without further ado, I welcome on fellow Long Island native, Maria Desimone, on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Maria Desimone, it is such an honor to have you here on my podcast. So good to have you here.
Jacob, it's always nice connecting with you. And thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to talk about my favorite subjects.
All things astrology. Yeah, this is a full circle moment for me because I remember a couple of years ago, I was on your podcast, and that was one of my favorite. And I've done tons of interviews, but that was one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. And so it's just an honor to have you on my platform here and just to really highlight the brilliant astrologer that you are. And I know so many in my platform will begin to know you if they don't already do, and just see the brilliant light and guiding force that you bring with all things astrology.
Oh, you are so kind. Thank you.
So, Maria, I mean, you've been doing this for how long, astrology? How long have you been an astrologer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started studying astrology around 2003. Time is getting away from me, so give or take a year. And I achieved my first certification and actually started to call myself a professional astrologer. Launched my website in 2005. And that's when I launched my website. My school came a few years later. So I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, I mean, you're a YouTube sensation. We'll make sure to plug your incredible YouTube channel. And, your name is out there with some of the top tier astrologers from a lot of people that I talk to in my industry. But I'm wondering, just to scale it back, like you mentioned, like early 2000s, you became certified.
Yeah.
What first got you, Maria Desimone, into astrology? What perked your interest? Did you come from families of astrologers or people who were into this? I mean, I'm curious as to what your why was.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, like you, I'm sure you feel the same way. I'm sure you feel that what you do it's not a job, it's not work, it's a calling. And that's exactly how I felt. And so early on in life, I always wanted to be either a clinical psychologist or a writer. For a short time, I wanted to be an astronomer when I was very young. And so I did go to school. I have a bachelor's in psychology. I was going to go for the PhD program, but then I was getting married. I knew I wanted to have kids. Didn't think the schooling was fitting the bill at that time. So I started going to school for social work. I went to Hunter College, a master's program there, but I dropped out after about 6 months or so because it was all paperwork, red tape, wasn't aligned really to what I wanted to do, which was connecting to people and really doing some healing work. So parallel to that, I've always had an interest in everything metaphysical, and that's because of my mother. My mother was a weirdo back in the day. Back in the day, you could not go to a bookstore and get a book on any metaphysical topic. You had to order them through the mail, and it was like a top secret society kind of a thing. And my mom always exposed me to numerology, to the psychic world, to mediumship, all of it. And so I always had a very healthy interest in that, but she wasn't an astrologer. She wasn't well versed in astrology. Astrology didn't come till a little bit later. And please shut me up and tell me if I'm getting too long-winded. I'm trying to keep it short, but
we love your every word. Your journey is inspiring and fascinating.
Okay, so then I'll continue with the story. So then I got married, had kids, and at that time I thought my heart's desire was to be a stay-at-home mom, and I love my children, but I realized I was not the type of woman who was built to be exclusively a stay-at-home mom. I was very ambitious. I wanted a career. And so I wrote a book. I wrote a book and I said, okay, I'm going to be the next New York Times bestselling author. And I wrote a novel, a family saga, and I was trying very hard to get it published. And this is where astrology intersected into my life. It was about 2002-ish when I wrote the book. I was trying to get it published and I was getting rejections like crazy. And so I said, all right, is this going to happen? I happened to be at a bookstore. You may know of this. It used to be a Borders bookstore near Fortunoff in Westbury. It's closed down since then, but all of that's closed down since then. But I walked into the bookstore looking for books on agent representation and all of that. And I saw this big poster when I walked in, and it was an astrologer and an astronomer. He was both. His name is Alex Mallon, and he was giving lectures, monthly lectures for your birthday. And it was basically a little monthly overview. And if whoever was having a birthday that month, at the end, they could raise their hand and he was going to give you astrological insights. So I saw that and I said, wow, maybe this guy could tell me if I'm going to be the next New York Times bestselling author. That's literally all I cared about at that moment. So I go to the lecture. It was our birthday season. We're both Taurus sun signs. So I knew I was going to get my little mini reading. And after his very interesting presentation, I was raising my hand and he had a laptop on the podium. He clicked in information. I gave him my date, time, location of birth, and he's staring at the screen, couldn't see what he's looking at. And I'm like, what is this guy doing? And right away, the first thing out of his mouth was, so you're a writer.
Wow.
I almost fell off my chair. I'm like, oh, keep talking, dude. So he's talking, he's telling me all of this amazing information about me that he couldn't have possibly known. And at the end of what he told me, I said, how do you know this? Are you psychic? And he looked at me and he said, well, I am intuitive, but this is all grounded in your astrology, in your birth chart. And he invited me up to the podium. I saw my chart for the first time. In that moment, every hair stood up. I had tingles all over my body. I looked at my horoscope for the first time, and Jacob, I knew with every fiber of my being that this was meant to be my life's work, and I had to learn everything I possibly could. And that's how the calling was born. I proceeded to study. That's a whole other, long story, because it does take years of study to be proficient in this language. And a series of life events led me to saying, all right, I'm going to have to make a career out of this, do or die. And I did. And I never looked back, and God made it happen. Spirit made it happen.
Wow. So it seemed like seeing that in front of you gave you a lot more confidence, validation, and self-awareness of who you are and the life that you were meant to live. And that was like a gift that you got. And it seemed from getting that gift, you were motivated in your own way to give it back to other people.
Oh, absolutely. Astrology is, what is unique about astrology as a metaphysical tool that sets it apart from other metaphysical tools is that it has this duality. In tradition, it was used for prediction, and that is the roots of astrology. It has incredible strength in prediction and allowing us to see cycles and patterns and to time events when they may unfold for us. But in modern times, when psychology was invented, actually, so it's fairly new, less than 200 years old, modern psychological astrology and that theory came into practice. And here is where we can look at a birth chart and uncover so much information about your personality, your character, your potential, your strengths and weaknesses, the short circuits, your trouble spots, your karmic lessons. It's never ending. So that's why astrology can never be boring, because it is so much more than your sun sign.
And, it's a beautiful gift to give to other people, because I'm sure you experience this like in my clients or lectures. The number one question is, who am I? Why am I here? And there's many different angles to go about that question. But do you find that clients are able that come to you are able to have a little bit more of an insight to their life path and why they're here? Is that something that, you're able to find in astrology?
Oh, absolutely. There is a place in your birth chart that can give illumination and insight into every single question you have about life, including your vocational profile. And, you're not going to look at someone's birth chart and say, you have to be an astrologer, or you're meant to be a teacher, you're meant to be a lawyer, a doctor. It's not like that. It's more like you see all of these talents and leanings, and you put it together into a storyline of possibilities for that person.
Mm,
Because we are like onions. We're also multi-layered. So there's not one pigeonhole. You've got to be an accountant, otherwise you're not fulfilling your life purpose. It's
right.
it's so much deeper.
So yeah, I'm sure you get this a lot, but the destiny versus free will dichotomy is a part of astrology. Like it's not all just strictly in the stars, like you would say.
I'm so happy you brought this up. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I cover it in depth in my beginners class because I want people to have that conversation early on. And so there is a Latin phrase. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. It is called amor fati. Have you ever heard of this phrase?
I'm more fatty. I mean, I'm feeling fatty over the holidays, but no,
Not in that way.
amor means love, is it? Or
More
yeah.
means love. Fati, Fati. So it translates into it's a Latin phrase. It means love your fate.
Mm,
And so the ancient astrologers really had this philosophy and this understanding, which in our modern times, our egos have a hard time with this.
mm,
But this is deep. And so fate and free will both coexist. However, your birth chart, once you are born and you take that first live breath and your soul enters the body full time for this lifetime, at
mm,
that moment, the planetary alignments, which is energy, we're all energy, that energetic dance and connection, it imprints onto your soul as your soul enters your physical body for this lifetime. And that's how an astrologer can read a horoscope and get all this information. But that act, when that happens, once it does, you're cooked. It's fated.
mm,
You cannot change your birth chart. That is, if it is not showing up as potential to occur in your birth chart, it will not happen. And so the fated part is that. Now, here's the free will part.
mm,
When you understand your tendencies, your character, your potential issues, when you understand it all, you're raising your consciousness. And as we raise our consciousness and vibration energetically, that enables our free will to be more directed.
mm,
So there is an amount of free will, but it is contained within a limitation of what we can possibly even do in our birth chart, if that makes sense.
mm.
Um, I like,
Yeah, I this may be too out of left field or too like higher up the rungs of Jacob's ladder here, but I'm curious to really pick your mind um as to why people maybe have specific signs or specific elements in their chart.
mhm.
Is astrology just a clinical thing, or is it more so from a life path thing where people are able to understand, hey, I'm a Taurus because maybe in a last lifetime, I don't know, I wasn't so grounded, I wasn't so connected to the earth. Is there a karmic and life path value to the astrological chart that people have, or is that something like way too out of left field of
No,
the realm of
not.
possibilities?
Oh, it is not at all. And there is a branch of astrology that specifically answers this. It's called evolutionary astrology. There are
Mhm.
many branches of astrology. You've got
Right.
predictive astrology, psychological, counseling astrology,
Mm,
all sorts of different branches. But to your point, we astrologers tend to have the framework, the belief system that we do have more than one life, that there is reincarnation and we do have multiple lives. And the whole point of incarnating into this physical existence is to get closer to that divine source, to that unity of consciousness, of unconditional love and being. And so we all have different soul journey. We're all at different places,
Mm,
and we all require different experiences in the human form. If that's what we're choosing to do, to come here, we require different experiences that will facilitate our soul growth. And some of us need to go through a horrific experience of losing a child, let's say, or a, a health debility, something crisis oriented. Life is not easy. Nobody's painting unicorns and rainbows here. We all have our stress, our difficulties, our pain points. Your pain points, you're having them for a unique reason to facilitate your soul growth and your level. That
mm.
makes sense?
Oh, yeah. And I think in life, people could be a victim or a victor of circumstances,
Yeah.
and having a degree of faith and awareness that we're going through things through the growth, not, to just be bamboozled by life, I think could be helpful and skillful. And so I think that's a great point, that things are just not random, in the universe. So that's really cool. I'm wondering for yourself. I mean, I've found this myself, that there's been a big shift just in terms of the mainstream, of all things metaphysics, from mediums to psychics to astrology, where, now I'm going to the water cooler in my job, and it's like it's hard to find someone not talking about astrology or a medium that they saw. Things are changing. With that change, what do you feel people should maybe know, like casuals who are into this, who don't have like a lot of hours to maybe invest in astrology? What are some of the myths that maybe people are picking up on pop astrology that may be limiting? And what do you feel are the main points that people should really understand when it comes to, let's say, their sun sign or other planetary aspects that would give them more wealth of self-awareness and understanding?
Oh, sure. So I always say sun sign astrology opens the door. It
Mm,
gets us into the real meat and potatoes of astrology's potential.
mhm,
So I do not fault sun sign astrology. I've written columns for years. I've done video horoscopes for
mhm,
years and years on sun sign astrology. So it gets you in the door. But the sun in your chart, the placement of the sun, it is like looking at your thumb and ignoring the rest of your hand.
wow.
So you need your thumb. It's really useful. But what about the rest of your hand?
Mm,
And what about how it all works together? All those fingers, the movement, all of it. That's what your birth chart is, the holistic view of everything. And so the sun sign symbolizes something very specific connected to your life purpose, where you're shining, your goals, your energy. But it's not all of you. And so it is really worth everybody getting your date, time, and location of birth from your birth certificate. The time of birth is very important for accuracy in your horoscope. And plugging that information into a free astrology chart maker. And, thanks to Google, you can just Google the one of your choice, free astrology chart maker, plug it in and see what your birth chart looks like. Have that moment of,
mm,
wow, that was actually happening in our solar system when I was born.
mm,
And so take that in, understand the magnificence of it. Even if you don't know what any of that means, it's going to ignite your curiosity a little bit. And so the first thing is, pop astrology, it is not just your sun sign. It is so much more. That's just the door. That's your thumb, not the whole hand. The second thing is, with pop astrology, you're hearing everybody talk about things like Mercury retrograde and, oh, the whole world falls apart. And, we laugh about that because astrologers know everything happens in cycles. And Mercury retrograde is certainly not a catastrophe. It happens 3 times a year on average for 3 weeks at a time. It is part of the greater pattern of Mercury's motion. And and it means something, but it doesn't mean that your life is going to fall apart and your computer is going to crash and you're going to have a miserable car accident or something. It it all depends. I always tell everybody, every cycle depends on the math and how that cycle connects to the math in your birth chart. So a Mercury retrograde cycle can mean absolutely nothing for you, but it could wreak havoc in my daily life for a few weeks if it's hitting my chart mathematically
mm.
in a difficult way. If it's hitting it in a beautiful way, well, you know what? I would have found documents that I lost and was searching 4 months ago, or I would renegotiate a contract and come out on top if it was aspected well. So you cannot take the pop astrology stuff for face value. And that's why I think everybody in the world at some point in their life should invest in a consultation with the astrologer of their choice to really see the depth of a horoscope in your life.
It makes total sense because I remember also being in social work school and we were studying diagnoses, and all the classmates were like, I have this, I have that, I have that, I have that. And it's very hard to be objective with yourself. And I think that's why consulting an experienced, brilliant astrologer like yourself could really give you that information. Because I don't know about you, but information, as you just illustrated, is everything in our reality. It could turn neurosis over Mercury in retrograde to using it as usefulness and something
Yeah.
that will, you could really maximize what it was there for. So that was a very important highlight that you provided, because yeah, there's a lot of neurosis, I'm sure, with these things, and that comes from bad information,
Well,
misguided information in many ways, I would say.
yeah, it's ignorance. It is, you know how people trash the weatherman. Oh, he's always wrong. The weatherman, this, that, and that. That's one of my favorite analogies. Is well, I mean, do you know how to predict weather patterns? Have you
Mm.
studied this? Do you know how to work the machinery that they know how to work? To look at the data. None of us know that. We're quick to judge and to say, oh, they are not accurate. They're always wrong. That's ignorance. And ignorance sounds like a really bad word, but it's not. It's just being misinformed. And we are all ignorant about something. And I'm ignorant about the weather. I don't know the weather patterns. Somebody else is ignorant about astrology. And so they'll hear bits and pieces of things in mainstream media and say, oh my gosh, Venus is retrograde. I can't get married, or something crazy. And it behooves you to educate yourself more about something before you allow it to make you neurotic, like you said.
Right. I I'm wondering because I think everything evolves within time. I'm a sports guy, so I watched guys playing sports back in, I don't know, the 40s and 50s, and I see them now, and I see games evolve. Guys have different tools, different technology. Astrology, has it evolved within time? Because I heard some people saying that they used to just go by the moon signs and stuff like that, and now we're, as a society, more sun sign focused. But have you seen more people like astrology evolve in terms of like awareness and our grasp of it? I'm just kind of curious because I don't know. It seems like everything has an evolution to it within time to a degree, except for the human race, because we still have the same patterns that we've had for thousands of years in many ways. But I'm curious if you've seen an evolution in astrology throughout time.
Well, the ancient roots and techniques of astrology have not changed.
Mm.
It is a language that has been around for thousands and thousands of years, and it is rooted in a very, very specific technical system that you still have to learn that technically. So that hasn't changed. What has changed is that, our life 3,000 years ago looks nothing like today. We've changed, we've evolved. We didn't have computers or technology 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, right? Am I doing my math right? We didn't even have computers 100 years ago. Yeah, I mean, I grew up without computers, so yeah, duh.
You're definitely less than 100 years old.
Yeah, so we did not even have computers. Now, back in the day, an astrologer would have to do the calculations to create a horoscope by hand, all of the math, the astronomical connections, all of that by hand. And astrology really is the oldest science known to man. It used to be taught in universities. All medical students were required to be astrologers. It went hand in hand. And that was until about, I believe it was the 17th century. So places like the University of Bologna, they had a full astrology curriculum. And people don't realize that because they look at astrology today in today's world and think it is some kind of pseudoscience. It's not. And so that framework, that's maybe a different topic because organized religion had a lot to do with
Mhm.
changing that, and getting it out of the universities and all that. But the in modern times, psychology is a branch uh, of science. I call it a science. I don't know if that's correct or not, but it's a branch that really is less than 200 years old.
Hmm.
And so it didn't exist 200 years ago, but it is certainly valid and it is certainly fascinating. And so what happened is psychology comes into our understanding, and now we're able to look at a horoscope and apply some modern information and techniques to look at this in a way that we wouldn't have looked at 2000 years ago, because 2000 years ago, trust me, nobody cared about their mommy and daddy issues. They were worried about the crops and survival and who was going to be the king, and which territory was going to take over the other. And that's what they used astrology for. They, it's a different use. So I'm kind of forgetting what the original question was, but in modern times, we have a different lens to look at astrology for, and that's wonderful and valid, but we shouldn't lose the roots and the ancient wisdom that it gives us, because it's grounded in something that is so special and so amazing, and that still is valid. That will never change.
Mhm. Yeah, we could evolve and improvise, but it's always important to keep those foundational roots.
Exactly.
And it seems from what you're saying, like astrology is more so seen from a collective standpoint, and now within the last 100 years or so, there's been an emphasis on the individual self improvement, self awareness. And so psychology and astrology have tied in themselves to one another. I mean, I'm watching some of these dating shows and I'm seeing some of these Vedic astrologers on there to help out and assist, with that. And I'm wondering for you, do you feel the potential of, professionals maybe working coinciding with astrologers? Like that would be a match made in heaven where psychologists, instead of just strictly working with psychiatrists, would be able to work with an astrologer. Like, that would be a dream situation.
And it's so funny because you're saying it's a dream situation, but that actually is reality.
That does happen. Yeah.
Carl Jung was an astrologer.
Mm,
And part of the dissension between Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung had to do with Freud was not as tolerant or interested in astrology as Carl Jung was, and so that was the part of their dissension. If you study that, and look that up, guys, if you're interested, it is real. And so many mental health professionals use astrology as
yeah.
a, whether or not they're telling their clients about that or not is a different story. Some people are, some people are not, but you can use more than one modality to help someone achieve a goal.
Yeah.
And so it is actually, in my experience, very common now, to do that.
Yeah. And I wish that was part of our curriculum because I mean, I use it like privately and sometimes when I know a client
Yeah.
is into it, but always the emphasis is meeting the client where they're at. Like, you can't enforce, but
Yours.
it,
Yeah.
it does help me. And I find like I've had two or three clients at the same birthday as me, and it's been like electricity, it's been so it's funny how I'm able to use that to be more self-aware, but also maybe some of the, symmetry between yourself and a client potentially, but it's cool.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
cool tool.
And I do it in the reverse. I'll use psychological techniques, but I'm mainly an astrologer. So I'm my home base is always going to be astrology,
Mhm,
but I can, look at it through a psychological lens if that is what the client wants. The
mhm.
client wants straight up prediction, fine. I could go that route too, so it's really it's endless in terms of how helpful and valuable it could be as an added tool in your toolbox of life.
Yeah, it's a beautiful tool that I wish, people would just continue to expand their awareness on. And now, like you said, it is accessible. You could go on Google and it could give you a birth chart, but obviously going to an astrologer will give you a much more in-depth explanation. And a lot of people that I talk to who go to astrologers are like, oh my God, I feel understood for the first time. And I get myself. It's, all the struggles that I've had, all these things that people thought that I was crazy for, it all makes sense. There's a why, there's an explanation. So I couldn't thank you enough, obviously, for, those moments that I'm sure you've given to countless clients. It's a
Oh.
beautiful exchange.
It feels so good to be able to do something in life that feels so purpose driven and so helpful and healing. And I know you relate to that for sure. And the one difference between straight up counseling psychotherapy versus astrology, using astrology in that way, is that, in traditional counseling, you have to wait for your client to disclose information.
Mm,
You don't know in traditional psychotherapy if you're sitting with someone who struggles with alcoholism, if you're sitting with someone who's been sexually abused, if you're sitting with someone who's in a domestically violent relationship. You don't know what the deal is. You have to wait for them to tell you.
mhm,
The difference is when you're looking at someone's horoscope, you are looking at the blueprint of their soul and their soul potential. And so you come into the session already having a really good idea of their potential pain points. I would never assume that, without letting the client bring it to life, what is and isn't true, but the potential pain points. And then you can guide the conversation in a way that allows them to feel safe and comfortable to disclose something immediately and they feel seen and heard. So you can say, all right, Sally Mae, it appears that when you were 8 years old, there was an incredible disruption in your life. It may have involved your parents and it seems to have really affected you. And Sally Mae is going to be like, that's when my parents got divorced and I was shuffled around and life was really hard and or any number of events. And so people say all the time, one session with an astrologer feels like 6 months worth of therapy because you get to the point really quickly with
mm,
astrology.
absolutely. That's good for a New Yorker too. We like to go to the point, right?
Yep, you got it.
New York Italian, right? Yeah.
Uh-huh,
But yeah.
uh-huh.
Um, from more of a macro standpoint, I purposely am going to release this video right before the new year. And, it's, I'm sure, very difficult to get into every single thing that's going to happen in 2025. But for viewers, is there like certain themes collectively that you're noticing with 2025 at an astrological glance? Because, you know, astrology is very nuanced. There's, I'm sure, it's kind of very Virgo ruled. There's a lot of detail orientation to it. But from like, if there's a possibility of like a short overview that people could have, like what should we know with the year that is about to come? Should it be a year of trepidation, fear? Should it be something that we should know before we enter this year?
So this year is really unusual because we are having in 2025 an extremely rare occurrence that will not happen again in our lifetime for sure. And this is 2025 and 2026. So it's both years. It's like an overlap where all of the outer planets in astrology are going to change signs. Now, this is very rare. So there's a difference between the personal planets, the planets that are closest to the sun, versus the planets that are farther out past the sun. And the outer planets are Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And these guys move really, really slowly in comparison to, let's say, Mercury or Venus. So Pluto, for example, can take 246 years to go around the sun, whereas Mars takes 2 years in comparison. So you can see this is the big differences. So the fact that all of these outer planets are actually changing signs and overlapping that in 2025 and into 2026, by 2026, it'll be permanent. It really means that for every single sign, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're a Virgo, if you're a Pisces, if you're a Gemini, if you're a Taurus, it does not matter. It guarantees incredible life altering experiences for all of us that we have never encountered before because we have never experienced this in our lifetime before.
Hmm.
Now, what those experiences are, where they happen in your life, that is very specific and individualized depending on your birth chart and depending on your unique horoscope. So many of those changes, for one person, it could be in career, whereas for another person, it could be health or it could be finance. So it is truly impossible to talk about the specifics
Mm.
without a personal consultation. However, a horoscope, a general horoscope for your sun sign or your rising sign, which is my preference to look at a horoscope first, because the math is closer to being accurate. And I'm happy to explain that if you need me to after. But these these horoscopes, these year ahead horoscopes, are very interesting and valid to understand the highlights of, well, what's in store for me, big picture change.
Mm.
So while I couldn't possibly give that for all 12 signs in the time that we have left, what I could do is, you could basically, you can choose this for me. You can say, all right, do I want my audience to hear something really good, or do I want my audience to hear something really challenging? So you pick, and then I'll go from there, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of information. So give me a theme, and then I'll go from there.
Well, I'm wondering if it's possible to be objective and include both. I don't know, maybe I'm being greedy here, but
We don't have time for that. I'm sorry.
uh,
It's
yeah,
silly.
yeah, I'll follow your lead as to what you
Well,
feel
you know what? Let's
intuitively.
let's be positive, okay? Because we'll do it. We'll do the Santa Claus version. We'll do the nice
The
version.
Sagittarius
The
version, right?
Sagittarius version, yes. And understand, I mean, listen, life, as you know, it is it's a parallel. There are great things happening in one area of our life, and there are really terrible things happening in
Mm,
another area. Some years are crisis years where we are brought to our knees and
mm,
devastated. And those are a handful of years in our life. Thankfully, it's usually not 30 years of our life. It's a handful of real, genuine crisis years, but they happen. And then we have those amazing opportunity golden years where it's just like the stars are aligned and all the good things are happening and we're on top of the world. Those are also a handful of years. It's not, everything either. Most years are both. Most years are, you got to take the good with the bad. And you have to understand that it really is your perception and perspective of how to deal with life, and not why did this happen to me, but what is this trying to teach me, that
mhm,
gets you past most of your hardships. So we're going to talk about, in general, the good things, which is connected to the planet Jupiter most often. Jupiter is known as the greater benefic in astrology. It is the planet that wants you to grow. It wants you to have more of something. And more isn't necessarily good, but in general, more can be good. Too much sugar leads to diabetes. So more isn't always good.
mm,
It really depends on what that more is attaching to. But in general, we're going to talk about Jupiter's placement and what goodness each sign can expect. Does
mm.
that sound like a good course of action?
That sounds wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, so the planet Jupiter takes about a year to travel, about 12 to 13 months to move through a sign, and typically in one calendar year, it will overlap into two signs. So that means two different areas of your life get attention for growth and goodness.
Mm,
So for Aries, and I also mean Aries rising, the rising sign when I say this, but it also applies to the sun sign. And the rising sign is always accurate mathematically in terms of when something is happening. The sun sign is always accurate thematically. So you want to blend the information together. Read for your rising sign and your sun sign if you know that information. The rising sign, it is the 9 o'clock position of your chart, the sign that starts your chart. You need to know your time of birth and your place of birth to get that information
mm,
and on a free chart maker. If you don't, go by your sun sign. You're fine. So for Aries, the planet Jupiter is going to travel through your third house of communication and your fourth house of home and family. Until June 9th, we're talking about your third house, and there's going to be a lot of growth in areas connected to the mind, communication of all kinds, sales, marketing, maybe an improvement in relationship with your siblings. Then after June 9th, and also lots of travel opportunity. After June 9th, we're talking about home, family, real estate. And there is going to be, for the second half of the year, this big upsizing connected to family dynamics. Maybe there's a new addition to the family. Maybe you're moving. Maybe you're doing work around your house. The peace and harmony of your living situation is likely to increase. So that's Aries. For Taurus, Jupiter is going to be going through your second house of earned income and talents and your third house of communication. So until June 9th, we've got Jupiter in the second house, and that's more money. That is the confidence in using your talents and abilities to monetize them in this physical world. And that is a really great opportunity for Taurus. And then after June 9th, it's communications. So if you're in sales, marketing, teaching, those industries will bring you profit, but there's likely to be a lot of opportunity in third house matters for Taurus during the second half of the year. For Gemini, we have Jupiter is in your sign as the year begins. Jupiter is in Gemini until June 9th. And that is the luckiest placement of all when Jupiter is traveling through your sign, because you are expanding in every way possible. Your confidence is soaring. You are writing an amazing brand new chapter that's going to last over the next 12 years, the whole 12-year Jupiter cycle itself. And so you'll find new relationships forming. The people that come into your life, they have your best interests at heart. It is a dynamic time where you're ready to take a risk, take a chance on yourself and do something new. After June 9th, it's about the money and the increase there for finances. Okay, keep going. Just keep going. I'm not sure if you wanted to do anything or.
Yeah, well, follow your lead. This is very helpful to all my viewers. What a
Okay,
gift.
So for Cancer, Jupiter starts the year in the area of your chart that's very hidden and spiritual. And some people feel like, oh, this is such a waste of luck. My luck is hidden. It's my favorite placement because it's my natal placement. And I'm here to tell you that having Jupiter in the 12th house brings you divine protection like you wouldn't believe. If something really negative happens, you're always rescued. So it's a beautiful placement. It is a highly intuitive spiritual placement. You'll notice that your psychic gifts are stronger while Jupiter is in your 12th house. And then after June 9th, Cancer, you get Jupiter in your sign. So you are in for a run of potentially really great expansion. Now, remember, what I'm saying is general, and it is, to be honest, very heavily mitigated by what those outer planets are doing in relation to everything else. So depending on the degree of Cancer, depending on the degree of Gemini and all that, there can be two things can be true at the same time. There can be this really great opportunity for expansion, but maybe not everybody can take advantage of it because they're dealing with a career crisis or a sick parent or something like that. So in general, Cancer has that opportunity the second half of the year for new relationships, really feeling confident in their goals and their life journey and all of that. And it can be a very fortunate time. Now, Leo will have Jupiter in the beginning of the year till June 9th in their 11th house of social alliances, friendships. And this is a classic, your friends really want to help you. They can give you opportunities. They want to connect you to someone who knows a guy who's going to help you get that business launched or career dream come true or introduce you to the love of your life, whatever it is. So friendships are really important for Leo. Then the second half is that divine spiritual protection that Leo is going to get. And you're going to really trust those spidey senses because they're very much on target after the second half of the year. For Virgo, you're starting the year with a big career cycle. Jupiter is in your career sector. It is an amazing time to start a business, to reach for a promotion, to go in a new direction professionally if your heart's been wanting to do that. And then the second half of the year is that friends with benefits energy. You're going to be connected to people who just open doors for you. And this kind of Jupiter energy, by the way, this is a good time, the halfway point to tell people that Jupiter, it just doesn't drop the lottery in your lap. It doesn't work like that. Jupiter's function, it wants you to grow. So you do have to say, I am open to maximizing this area of my life and putting in the energy to make it the best it could be. So when Jupiter's in your friendship sector, if you're sitting home alone on the couch every day, how's that going to work? You got to use your cycle, your energy. So Libra, you have Jupiter in the 9th house of academic achievements, international travel, spiritual possibilities in the first half of the year. So maybe you're going back to school for a certification, a license, an advanced degree. Maybe you're traveling to a new country. It is also very fortunate for legal matters. So that is the first half of the year, and also great for metaphysical pursuits, religious studies, all of that. After June 9th, Libra's got the career win. So everything I said about career for Virgo, it applies to you, Libra, after June 9th. Scorpio is starting in the 8th house, which is other people's money. So this is when you could get a loan and get that mortgage for your dream home. You may get, college paid for. You may get grants if you're applying for grants. Money can come to you in a much easier way from a source besides your own income. And then after June 9th, you've got the academic growth, the international growth, legal support, all of that. Sagittarius, it's a big relationship year. So Jupiter's in your partnership sector, and Sagittarius has a special relationship to Jupiter because it is your ruler. It is the planet that rules your sign. So this Jupiter transits are really important for Sagittarius, and Jupiter here is in your partnership sector. Not just personal relationships, it's business as well. So this is a time where you may grow and take on a new business partner. If you're in a business where you see clients or patients, you may get a big uptick in them. You may absolutely meet someone and you might get engaged or get married or move in with the person. You may break up with someone and enter into a new commitment with a different person all in the same year. That can happen with a Jupiter transit as well. And it is really a wonderful energy if you need to hire an agent, a publicist, a lawyer, anyone you have a legal contract with. After June 9th, we're talking about Jupiter in the 8th house for you, and that's the money transit, getting a mortgage, a loan, paying off your debt, getting an inheritance, that kind of a thing. For Capricorn, Jupiter starts in your 6th house of illness and work, daily work. So Jupiter, if you remember, I said its job is to blow up what it touches. And it is not uncommon for Jupiter to blow up an illness when it comes to your 6th house, but not to scare people. Jupiter here wants to protect. Jupiter wants you to pay attention to what's wrong with your body. Jupiter will be protective once you open your eyes to it and seek out the right protocols in healthcare. And so Jupiter will help heal, but it will often inflame something that's already wrong in your body initially. Jupiter here also makes you really busy with work. Lots of work. You're turning down assignments. You get all the job offers and generally harmony at the office. Then after June 9th, Jupiter goes into your partnership sector and Capricorn will have amazing energy with relationship dynamics. So now we're at Aquarius and Jupiter starts in your love sector and the area of your chart connected to children. Jupiter can bring you children if you are, wanting to expand your family or start a family. If you already have children, something very blessed happens in the life of a child. And if you're single, it's a great love transit and you may be dating and having fun and so much pleasure and joy in your life. Then after June 9th, Jupiter goes into your 6th house and it's that, pay attention to your health, work gets busy. And then finally for Pisces, Jupiter starts in your 4th house of home, family, real estate, expanding that area of your life. It's a great time to purchase real estate. You may find, lots of harmony with family members, maybe doing some work around your house, harmonizing your living situation. And then after June 9th, it is the love and children yumminess with Jupiter in your 5th house. So hopefully that gives your listeners something to work with, something to inspire them and look forward to in 2025.
That was the most thorough, comprehensive, specific piece of information on my channel to date. I couldn't thank you enough for that gift, and everyone listening could find something not only for themselves, but people that they know of these, maybe different signs. And, that I think that should be the beautiful thing about astrology is, yes, you could study for yourself, but you could also use it, to really understand, people in your life and what they may be going through. So my God, thank you for that. That was a real gift to my audience.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. I'm happy to be Santa Claus for your audience and really the hope of inspiring everyone to say, wow, there's a lot more to this astrology. Let me look into it. And truly that's, the sun sign is your thumb. We just looked at your pinky. Okay. There's still a lot left. There's a lot left.
Yeah, and obviously for people who want to get more information, we'll have all your information, within the interview. But remind us again, what is your website for people who want to get an individual astrological, reading or consultation?
Absolutely. So my website is insightfulastrology.com, and that is the place where you can schedule a consultation with me, book a coaching package. My entire astrology school is also there on my website, and I teach classes from the beginner's level all the way through advanced. And I always use the students' birth charts in the lesson plans and the homework assignment. So it kind of feels like getting a personal consultation and learning astrology together. It makes it very relevant. And you can also get your 2025 year ahead video forecasts on my website. So that's a standalone video product, and each forecast is 25 to 30 minutes long. So that's why I said there's no way to talk about everything for every sign. But that gives a really good overview of what's coming for you in 2025.
Yeah. And you also have a booming YouTube channel as well, which I'll make sure to include in descriptions. But remind me, your YouTube channel, you just type in Maria Desimone, or is it specific?
I think you could type in my name, Maria Desimone, or Insightful Astrology. I think it comes up either way, to be honest with you. I'm not specifically sure, but both, either one. You could type in either one and it'll come right up. It's like right there in front of your
Yeah.
face. And you know, the YouTube channel, it's so funny because YouTube, I think, was launched in 2006, if I'm correct. So the producer of my video horoscopes launched it for me in 2008, and I didn't get my start on YouTube specifically. I was one of the pioneers of video horoscopes. So back in the day, I was one of three astrologers who were saying, all right, let's do video horoscopes. Now everybody does it because we have YouTube, we have everything else. But back then, my videos were professionally filmed and syndicated on the internet. So YouTube for me didn't become a thing until the syndication deal ended in, I think, 2017. So YouTube has become such an amazing resource and way for me to connect with astrology enthusiasts, and I really love giving the video content there.
No, and I strongly encourage any viewer to check out Maria's videos. They're amazing and they're well thought out. They're just they're flawless. So please do check out. She's got a wealth of videos that will be helpful on your journey as well as her website too. But yeah, it's funny that your sun sign is a Taurus because you seem to have Aquarian tendencies with being very innovative and always ahead of your time. So maybe I'm overstepping my role because I'm not an astrologer, but that's pretty cool that like sometimes people could be true to their signs, like totally like very fixed, and then other times they'll have other interplanetary aspects and parts about themselves that they may not be as true to their, you know, their thumb or whatever, you know. So
We are multifaceted human beings, and there's a lot there in the nooks and crannies of all of us.
yeah. So it seems like this is a year that's really going to shake up to wake up in a way, and we're already seeing some of the embers of this with all the drones going around, and then we have inauguration. So there's a lot of things happening, and it makes sense, and even numerologically. And I don't know if I'm sure that's something that you're well versed in. This is going to be a 9-year, which represents endings, right? So astrology, numerology, sometimes those could tie in. Like, do you find there's symmetry with the two of them?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I consult with my numerologist often, and we always, will barter readings, and we always are amazed at how the astrology and numerology for an individual is very much aligned and symbolic, and it always seems they complement each other. I love numerology, 7 life path. Everything else is a 9 in my chart. So don't be afraid of nines, people. Don't be afraid of your 9 year.
7, that's a very like more of like a reserved, philosophical kind of, kind of sign. I mean, I look at it for more so even like house numbers. Like I grew up in a 7 household, and that was very much into thought, into introspection. Seventh day in my religion is a day of rest, introspection. So yeah, it's real cool. Um, for viewers, I mean, outside of astrology, your path is obviously inspiring. You know, are where you are today from taking a leap of faith in many ways and taking that chance. You know, for those viewing this and just kind of like curious about, they may be stuck or they may want to do something, but there's something blocking them. Like, is there any bit of like tidbits of insight that you can give, maybe for those who just want to do something, but are getting in their own way from their dreams and their hopes? Because you're living your dream out here, and it's
No.
amazing to see.
So, a general statement, gosh, I can be very direct with people, and this is not going to apply to everybody, but I believe that when we sit with ourselves in quiet contemplation, and for a lot of people, it's really uncomfortable. For me, I'm a hermit. I every day I do that. So I prefer that. But when you sit in that quiet contemplation with yourself and confront yourself on the internal level, I do believe that your voice is whispering to you where you're supposed to be going and what you're supposed to be doing. I think people don't quiet the noise. People like the noise. They use the noise as a distraction. And if you quiet the noise, I do think your internal compass is speaking to you. And some people, fear is in the way, or you think that you're not good enough, or whatever your issues are that are stopping you. But we I do think that for a great majority of us, we betray ourselves before anyone else does, before any other situation in life does. And so it is the ultimate betrayal of the self to not at least explore your potential and why you're here, and seek out the guidance of somebody else to help you if you can't do it on your own, whether it's a therapist, an astrologer, a numerologist, a psychic, whatever. Seek out that help. The past life regression, all of it. It's all so helpful, and you'll get to the root of it. You'll get to that inner voice. And that's why when you get these types of sessions, it feels validating and confirming, because it's reminding you that, wait, you might have had the answer all along. You just forgot to listen.
Yeah. It's amazing how restrictive fear can be. And if you tap into intuition, belief, and you're living proof of it, your life could be a dream, and it's very expansive. And we're not meant here to play small. We're a big soul, who's not here to play small, so.
Not at all. And it's so funny, going back to me in 2002, 2003, when all I cared about was being that New York Times bestselling author. Well, that book never got published. That book turned out to be a real life prophecy of events that happened in my life 5 years later. And that taught me that I had a skill about writing the future, that I had an intuition that I wasn't yet aware of. And so our failures, our perceived failures, are actually guiding us. And we don't understand it at the time. And we feel really deflated. Those 52 rejection letters I had in my attic, I didn't understand it until years later. It was a redirection to what is really possible and what you're really aligned to do.
Yeah. Well, Maria, you're such a gift. I'm so blessed to cross paths with you and now call you a Long Island neighbor, right? Formerly
Absolutely.
Queens. Now, we bump into each other time to time,
I
but
know.
uh, couldn't thank you enough. This was so informative, so inspiring, so helpful for viewers to navigate the year that is and to better know themselves. And please, whenever you want to, come back on the channel. We love having you. And I just couldn't thank you enough for being my guest. This was an incredible conversation.
Well, it's my pleasure. And I want to thank you for everything that you're doing in the world, because you're doing incredible work. And, you have accomplished so much from such a young age. You really made such a splash in the metaphysical and psychological community. And I have to say, I'm so proud of you and what you've done. So thank you for being you.
I follow your lead, my friend. All right. Well, thank you. I wish you a wonderful upcoming holiday season and New Year's. And thank you for being on.
My pleasure. Take care.
Well, that was a wonderful interview with Maria Desimone. I learned so much about astrology, and it gave me a lot of empowerment and awareness for things to come. And I know it provided so much insight for many listening to the channel. So I do recommend checking out Maria's website. Consider getting yourselves, maybe a forecast reading or your own personal reading. It's incredibly transformational and self-awareness, as well as it could help you navigate what's to come. So thank you, Maria, for coming on. You're a wonderful guest. And thank you all for tuning in. We wish you all a wonderful upcoming New Year. And I hope this conversation helped you to be empowered as we step into 2025. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you in the new year.